exemplar response.
Oh, okay. I got you. So when they're debriefing the model.
Yeah.
I would say I'm comparing two numbers. First, I looked in the hundreds place to figure out what okay, so I looked at two numbers to try to figure out which number was larger. I started by looking at the hundreds place and comparing the hundreds place of the two numbers. If that didn't tell me which number was larger, I looked at the tens place to see which number, and that would tell me which number was larger. If that didn't tell me, I would look at the ones place, and that would tell me which number is larger. After finding the large number, I would underline it.
Mm-hmm.
Then, next, I make sure that the correct symbol is being used. I make sure the correct symbol is being used by checking to make sure that the inequality symbol is trying to eat the larger number that I underline. If the inequality symbol is not eating the larger number that I underline, then I know that this inequality is incorrect. I need to cross it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I think like when you're thinking about your debrief of the model, what should be right here is the exemplar response that you would like to see from a scholar.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah,
okay, cool.
To know, like this is exactly what you did in your model.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, so I think what was this one? So I know that in your practice, and I think this, your problem set, your guided practice and your problem set look great.
Okay.
I'm thinking of how will you model this? Did you plan to model like all of these problems at once? Because I would say to model one.
Yeah.
What's the top one?
Yeah.
I would say model like the first one.
Okay.
And then like let them do the others and circulate your room.
Okay. Cool.
And make sure that they're like able to do the second and the third one before they go on to an exit ticket.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it's kind of a long time to sit.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And you know that in Tulsa they don't like to sit.
No.
They like to work.
Absolutely. So you're saying model the whole first problem or just A?
The first problem.
Okay, so all four.
Yeah, you can model the whole first problem like all the way through.
Right.
Like your model, like how do you compare each and like eliminate and circle the two that are correct.
Yeah.
And then once you debrief, you go and let them do the second two before they do an independent practice.
Okay, so it would be like model one, debrief it, and then
say like now I'm gonna let you try on your own and I'm gonna circulate.
Okay, yeah.
So as you circulate, like you would just go and make sure that they're following your model. And at this point you can still help them because it's not like an exit ticket.
Right.
And so like as you're thinking about circulating and helping them, what do you think you should be doing?
I guess like I would first like scan the room generally and do some positive narrations of what kind of strategies I see. Like I see scholars that are starting with the first option. I see them comparing the 200s to see which number is bigger. Oh, I see one scholar found which number is bigger. They're underlying the one that's bigger. And like continuing to narrate that, and make sure like I see one scholar either like circled or crossed out this response before moving on to the next one. So like Yanni is not going on to letter B until she finishes up with letter A, underlining the number that's larger and circling it if the inequality is true, or crossing it out if it's false.
Yeah, so you definitely want to narrate the positive work that you want to see, and then like after you've done that, and you're like, and you can like sprinkle in the narration like here and there, but like in between that, what specifically are you doing with scholars as you're walking around? Like, so specifically, who would you go to first, and then what would you be doing?
I guess I would go to like I go to my front row, like my intervention kiddos who are Martino, Drayden, Cornelius, Breasia, and Brandel. And I would check in with them and just ask what are you doing to solve this problem? Like where do we start? And like try to listen for their thinking and just correct any misconceptions.
Yeah, I like the fact that you said, what are you doing to solve this problem versus saying like, this is wrong.
Do this, yeah, right.
Do this. And I know it's really tempting, but like we want to make sure that they like understand the concepts that you're trying to teach them. Like you're trying to help them understand that like at the end of the day, like when you're comparing two numbers, you have the largest place value, like you start with the largest place value, and when you get to the place value that has a largest number, like you know that that number is greater, like you want them to understand that concept versus saying like, this is wrong, let me show you, I just said blah blah blah, and you want to make sure that they understood your model. So I think that that's really good. So your action step, well, what I want to do right now, like your action step in practice, what we'll do right now is to make sure that the debrief matches exactly what the model does, because the model is very good, and making sure that the thinking job matches. We'll do that in this lesson.
Okay.
And then I think if we have time, then we'll go through the problem set. But I think we'll first start with that. So I can give you about 5 minutes to script that out if you want to look at
So scripting out.
your plan. Do you have your plan up?
Yeah, I have it pulled up.
So right here, like these two parts, like making sure that this thinking job matches this, and that this model is an exemplar of what you would want scholars to say once you're done.
Sounds good. So kind of like type that out right now.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So we can look like, so let's look here. So, so this is my clear job as a scholar. So scholars, like as I'm doing the model, like the first thing I want you to pay attention to is how I would say like how I use place value.
Okay.
To compare the numbers, like because you want them to start in 100s place, like that's your first step. So I would
should I change that up top or down here or in both places?
Both places,
Okay,
because I really what their thinking job is actually what they're going to tell you back as a debrief.
Okay. Okay.
So I would say like my first bullet point was scholars. So as I'm working on my model, the first thing I would do, what I want you to pay attention to is, let me see, how I use place value to figure out which number. It says they only need about 3 steps, so I'll type it.
Okay, gotcha.
Type my thoughts. So. yes. Pay attention to. So it says right here, while I'm working, pay special attention
Okay,
to
gotcha.
how I use place
Okay.
value to. I can spell.
Mhm.
To compare each number on either side of it.
Mhm.
Either side of the symbol. And then, so like after that, like they're looking at how you use place value.
Mhm.
Then they're looking at like once you've determined that,
Okay. How you figure it's the
make
correct
sure
symbol.
how I figure out.
Okay.
And you have that.
Mhm.
How do I figure out if the correct symbol is being used?
Okay, gotcha. So, drag it down there.
And then like they're figuring out and then so I guess the last step would be you like how I eliminate answers that I feel like are wrong,
Yeah.
and what do I do to answers that I know are right.
Okay, yeah. Cool. So how I indicate whether or not an answer is correct, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Like if you want them to put like a dot, like I used to do like dots and X's.
Mhm. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and like that's all that they need to think about because they can only hold like those 3 things.
Yeah.
Right.
Gotcha.
And so like we can take like this out.
Mhm.
And then like as they're debriefing, like you would want them to say in response to those questions.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
how did I determine the two numbers? Is what is the question? How did I figure out the 2 correct sets of inequalities? So you figured it out by these 3 steps. You compare the place value
Okay. Gotcha.
by underlining the largest number, and then you looked at the symbol, and I would tell you like I looked at the inequality, and the inequality should have the mouth open towards the largest number because I forgot what you said about the alligator. Like I should say that, and then the last step is if the inequality was correct, I put a dot by it. If it was incorrect, I put an X by it. And then I looked at my 2 correct answers and I circled them.
Okay, gotcha.
So I should be able to tell you that as a start.
Okay, gotcha.
And then you can type that.
Okay, cool.